Hello, True Crime Stories family. Welcome back. Diddy will appear in court today for his arraignment. His son, Christian, went to court today to show support for his father. Diddy's lawyer also appeared in court today and said his client is in good spirits. His lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, said Diddy is not guilty. He's innocent of these charges. Diddy have plans to plead not guilty. And he's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might. Although it's going to be a long battle. Diddy's lawyer said he is going to fight like hell to get him released, and he should be released with all that he's done and coming here voluntarily. Prosecutors are seeking to keep Diddy locked up ahead of trial, although Diddy offered to post a $50 million bond so he could be released from custody, pending his trial on 3 federal charges. He also offered to wear a GPS monitor while limiting travel to New York City and Miami, where he'd only be attending court, seeing his doctors and lawyers, according to a proposed bail package filed by his defense team. A plane owned by Diddy is in Los Angeles, and he's in the process of selling it, his lawyers said. Federal prosecutors are asking a judge to deny bail, insisting that the defendant is a flight risk and danger to the community.
Joining me now is celebrity lawyer Chris Melcher to break this all down for us. So Chris, these charges just came in. Explain what they are and what they possibly mean for the rapper.
Well, this is really serious because it's not just a collection of state crimes that he's being charged with. This is a federal criminal enterprise and traffic he's being charged with. So he's got the full weight of the federal government down on him, and they were patient. They took their time after the raids. So this is going to be extremely difficult for him to defend himself against.
So help me understand something. I mean, generally, when you are indicted, you can post bail and you can be out of those facilities in a very short time. But with the seriousness of these charges, how likely is it that he has to spend at least a couple of hours in prison?
So the magistrate's looking at primarily, will Diddy appear in court as promised for proceedings? And I think there he's got a leg up because he has cooperated. He was in New York anticipating this indictment and to surrender himself. So I think that it appears that he would show up for court because he didn't flee before. The other thing is the protection to the community. So would he pose a threat of committing any other crimes or dissuading witnesses, destroying evidence? Now, something happened last night because we were told that the arrest was supposed to happen today, Tuesday, but they accelerated it to Monday night. So something must have happened to accelerate that. I don't know those details yet, but I would imagine that he would be released on some electronic monitoring and other basic conditions.
All right, Chris Melcher, thank you so much for joining us and explaining these very serious charges and what happens next. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Diddy is a serious risk of flight and poses a significant risk of obstructing justice. He has a long history of seeking to bribe and illegally influence witnesses. Federal prosecutors said in a 16-page letter to the court, asking for Combs to be remanded into custody until trial. There are simply no conditions that would ensure that the defendant's efforts to obstruct and tamper with witnesses will stop, prosecutors wrote to Magistrate Judge Robin Tarnofsky. Prosecutors said they worry nothing could stop the defendant from acting out. In sum, the defendant's long history of conduct makes clear that even the most stringent bail conditions will not suffice to ensure the safety of the community, according to the government memo. Diddy faces 15 years to life behind bars if convicted of all charges, allegedly making his flight a threat due to his billion-dollar net worth.
And again, Combs, he's denying all of the accusations against him.
And Lisa, you know, when one reads this indictment, these 14 pages, I mean, I'm just wondering what stuck out to you as being the most significant one of all of these charges?
Jose, that's a very difficult question to answer because on each and every one of these 14 pages, I think I gasped at the severity of the charges here. Mark Agnifilo, the attorney that Chloe was just referring to, said earlier today that his client is an imperfect person. But if a jury were to find that Sean Combs engaged in any one of these three charges, he'd be far beyond imperfect. He'd be a person that we would all agree was grotesque and a monster for engaging in some of these behaviors. I think what stood out to me is how long Sean Combs was able to conceal the alleged behavior here through a variety of coercive techniques that span the gamut from the use of guns, plying his victims with drugs with respect to those freak-offs that Chloe was referring to, the fact that there were commercial sex workers involved here that were allegedly trafficked both across state lines but also internationally, the fact that there is video evidence because Sean Combs allegedly videoed these freak-offs and used them to intimidate his victims, essentially saying, look at what I have against you. I have videotapes of you engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers.
Will Diddy's staff and associates who aided in committing these crimes be held accountable for their involvement? They had knowledge of his actions, witnessed the suffering, and participated directly, making them complicit.
And the other thing that really stands out to me here, Jose, is the involvement of a panoply of unnamed people in and around Sean Combs' life, whether as personal assistants or security personnel, people who are high-ranking executives in his businesses. There are a lot of people here who are and could be accountable for the way in which they facilitated this abuse and conspired with him to make it happen. Those people here, unless they are already cooperating with prosecutors, and there's a good chance that they have some of these people as witnesses, many of them could face their own criminal liability here. There are references, for example, to staff concealing and hiding some of Sean Combs' victims in either his residences or hotels because they were so physically injured that for them to have been seen publicly would have been risking disclosing what was really going on. They're also alleged to have reserved the sex workers, to have arranged in their transportation. This is an enterprise for a reason, because it took a whole lot more people other than just Sean Combs to make the abuse and the trafficking happen. And we should continue to watch to see who is participating in the U.S. Attorney's Office's investigation and who might even face some charges here alongside Sean Combs. There are a bunch of people here looking at this 14-page instrument who should be nervous across the city or perhaps in other locations like Los Angeles and Miami. Jose?
Yeah, and Lisa, I mean, and let me just go to the fourth point brought up on just page 2 of this indictment. It says physical abuse by Sean Combs, the defendant, was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years. Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others. And then, of course, they include that Los Angeles hotel videotape of March of 2016. Lisa, this is, as you say, possibly involving a whole slew of people.
Absolutely. And I just want to be very clear about differentiating between witnessing conduct and being a part of an alleged criminal enterprise. Just simply being a bystander to this doesn't make somebody a participant in the criminal enterprise. But actively taking steps to conspire with the head of an enterprise is what's being alleged here, that these people, for example, at Sean Combs' encouragement and direction, did things like reserve hotel rooms, kidnap and conceal certain of his victims, obtain drugs and or IV fluids that were used to essentially sustain and rehydrate them after these freak-offs, which were, as Chloe described them, sex parties or sex marathons that in some cases lasted for days and imposed real physical injury and harm to some of the women who were involved, who were drugged throughout it. That takes the active participation, not just the knowledge and witnessing of other people. And so, as I said earlier, there must be a number of people in Sean Combs' life, whether they are personal assistants or security personnel, people who work at Bad Boy Entertainment arraignment or others of his businesses that were directly involved here. And if they are not already cooperating with the feds, many people are probably having that conversation this morning with lawyers, including those that they have never met. I would imagine that there are a number of criminal defense attorneys across the city whose phones are ringing right now, Jose.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing party about these freak-offs. If this is, again, proven to be something that actually existed, and they may have existed over and over again. And Lisa, the indictment also alleges that during these freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to the victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of the victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. With the reference to these videos that Combs apparently kept, what does it say about the potential evidence prosecutors have in their possession?
Well, we know, for example, that Combs's homes in both Los Angeles and Miami were raided last March. We can bet that among the evidence that prosecutors were able to obtain were some of these videos. Of course, prosecutors also have other video evidence in their possession that's referenced in this indictment, including that 2016 surveillance tape of Combs with his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who sued him civilly last November. That incident is referenced in the indictment, but as you note, Jose, the fact that prosecutors are saying here that Combs often took videotapes of his victims engaged in sex acts with commercial sex workers means that they have a reason to put that in this instrument. They have reasonable cause to put that here, and that likely means that many of those videotapes are within their possession and could be shown to a jury if and when this case goes to trial, Jose.
As Lisa, there's also the issue here, as I'm looking at page 7 and 8. It says that members and associates of Combs Enterprises, including Combs security personnel, at times carried firearms. That in and of itself is not illegal. But in or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami and in Los Angeles, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers. What does that tell you? Because it isn't illegal. For example, I know that in the state of Florida, it is not illegal to possess ARs, but defaced serial numbers on them is.
Yeah, and the fact that these weapons were found in his possession proves to me that they are trying to elude or evade detection, that these weapons were likely purchased on a black market. And, you know, Jose, the very presence of guns in this indictment is something that differentiates it from some of sort of the other major sex predation, if not trafficking, cases that we've seen over the last few years. I'm thinking namely of Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. What differentiates some of this is the guns and the drugs in particular, but also how much more visible the presence of other staff is. You know, we know, for example, from both the Epstein and Weinstein situations, that there were people around both of them that facilitated them. And yet, for the most part, with the exception of Ghislaine Maxwell, most of those people were never held to account, criminally or otherwise. This is the Southern District of New York in stating that there was a criminal conspiracy here, making it absolutely transparent. This did not exist without the cooperation, active engagement, and participation of a whole host of others that they say were known and unknown to them. But the fact that they know who many of these people are, those people should be scared this morning, because either they're going to end up being witnesses at trial, or they may see their name on the other side of what we call the V, the verses in a criminal instrument.